Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Lumio Station.
Good boss of Lumio Station, how's it going, everybody? Got for you guys today the second installment of 6ftStrats with 6fthax. I want to go ahead and apologize for not being able to get this up last week. I was just really busy the week before and never got around to really testing any new Pokemon sets, but I did get some time this week and I kind of tested this set out last week as well. Now, I don't want to call this set underrated. I actually want to call Kyurem in general underrated, because this is a Pokemon that is never really seen in UU for some reason. I don't know why. It's a really good Pokemon, and back in 5th gen, one of its best sets was Subroost with Ice Beam and Earth Power. So this set is not a new set. This is not something I discovered. This set has been known since back in 5th gen, but back in 5th gen, Kyurem was never really used just because there were many Dragon type Pokemon in OU that outclassed it. But in UU, I feel that this generation, it really fits well in the UU metagame right now. Although, as I said, it's not very common. People have kind of started discovering that Kyurem is actually not that bad of a Pokemon and is really good, which is why I also wanted to make my second episode of 6ftStrats on Kyurem, because I want this Pokemon to be used more in UU because it is really underrated, as I mentioned, and it is actually really good. So, looking at the EVs, the only real significant EV that kind of matters on Kyurem is the speed, just because with this EV spread, it's able to outspeed offensive Roserade and basically any positive natured base 90 Pokemon and below. Although if you really wanted to, you could go all out with max speed as opposed to having those little bit of HP EVs. But really, outside of 308 and above, there's not really much that Kyurem needs to outspeed. Plus, with those extra 56 HP EVs, it does take hits just a little bit better. And then the remaining bit is added into your special attack. Not to mention that with 405 HP EVs, you're able to make 101 HP substitutes, which was very nice for when Chansey was around. Although obviously Chansey did get banned, it's still very nice if you run into the occasional Dusknoir or Dusclops that tend to carry Nightshade, because they can break your substitute in one hit and you can proceed to outstall them. And what really makes this Kyurem set great is not only is it offensively based, but it can also be used to stall, because Kyurem's ability is Pressure, which forces you to use 2 PP as opposed to 1 PP. Which means, let's say your opponent has a Rotom, and actually, while you bring up Rotom, we're going to bring up the first damage calc. Some of you guys suggested that I put pictures or text of the damage calc as I talk about them, and I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to try to put it like right on the screen. I don't really know how it'll be. It'll probably just be like right in the center of the screen. But let's talk about Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat is a Pokemon that I've noticed recently has gotten a lot more usage because of the fact that it's actually really good. I know myself, I struggle sometimes when I face opposing Rotom Heats because they really are very versatile. Not only can they hit hard, but they can take hits as well. But on the topic of Rotom Heat, let's say your opponent has a physical defensive Rotom Heat, which from my experience is the most common Rotom Heat set out there, max defense and max HP. As you can see from the damage calc, Overheat only does 40% to 46%. Not to mention that you're guaranteed to be faster than Rotom anyways, so if you really wanted to, you could take the hit just to get off a little bit of Ice Beam damage, but it would normally be better for you to substitute on the off chance that they want to go for Will-O-Wisp. But you are able to easily take the Overheat, set up a substitute, and eventually you can stall them out of overheats, basically making Rotom Heat no longer a counter to you. And as you can see from the other damage calc, in Ice Beam 2 max defense max HP Rotom Heat does 22 to 26% amount of damage, which is actually really good once you really think about it, just because if you're behind the substitute, Rotom will not be able to go for the Pain Split and recover back its HP, and eventually you will be able to beat defensive Rotom Heat one-on-one. Now let's say a Rotom Heat is offensive, because I have seen Choice Specs Rotom Heats. As you can see, Rotom Heat with Choice Specs and a Timid Nature does 74 to 87%, which is a really good amount of damage. And if your opponent has Stealth Rocks up, obviously you will get knocked out by the Overheat, but this is why we have teammates. And I kind of wanted to save the teammates portion for after I talk about some of the damage calcs, but I guess this will be a situation where it would come in handy because, as I said in my very first episode, these will improve as I do them over time, and I would really appreciate it if you guys left suggestions in the comment section below on how I could possibly improve them. I apologize if I keep hitting my mic. I'm moving my hand. I tend to move my hands a lot, so I apologize about that. I apologize about that. But as I was saying, a very good partner for Kyurem is a defogger. Mainly my two favorite defoggers in the UU metagame at the current moment are physical defensive Mew and just all around defensive defog Crobat, because they both pair up very well with Kyurem. They can take fighting hits that Kyurem doesn't want to take, and on occasion they can take some fire hits, but normally you would want to have a water type or a rock type or even another dragon type on your team to be able to take fire hits from something like a Darmanitan or Victini. But two great partners for Kyurem White that get defog are Mew and Crobat. Crobat all around is just an amazingly good Pokemon. It's actually really bulky even if you don't invest a lot of bulk into it. It has access to U-turn, it has taunt, it can go for defog as I said. U-turn can actually be very helpful to be able to gain momentum. Like if your opponent switches into a wall to take a hit from Crobat, you can U-turn out into Kyurem and possibly set up a substitute on that wall and then proceed to go from there. So Crobat is a very great momentum getting Pokemon. Moving on to Mew though, Mew is really bulky. As a physical wall, it is extremely good. Not only does it have access to defog, but it also gets stealth rocks, which means you have the role of a defogger, a stealth rocker, and a physical wall all in one Pokemon in Mew, making it, which at times would be the superior pick to Crobat, but there are definitely those situations where Crobat is going to be more handy than a Mew per se. But Mew is very good because it can take hits a lot better. Also, it gets access to Will-O-Wisp, although I'm not recommending you to run Stealth Rocks, Defog, and Will-O-Wisp all on the same set. I'm just saying you can run 2 of the 3 on Mew, and if you do run Will-O-Wisp, you're going to be able to cripple physical walls that otherwise would be able to hurt Kyurem, and then you can set up a substitute on them and not have to worry about them breaking your substitute and eventually stall them out or take them down with your Ice Beam or your Earth Power. So Mew and Crobat are two very great defoggers for Kyurem, especially because of the fact that they resist Kyurem's fighting weakness, which Kyurem is actually really not weak to many things. Although Crobat and Kyurem do run a weakness in Stealth Rocks, they don't really tend to care about them because of Roost Crobat more than Kyurem, just because Crobat is extremely fast and it can outspeed just about every Pokemon in the tier that is not Scarfed, and be able to go for a defog and get rid of the rocks for Kyurem, which is really nice. But as I said, it comes down to what your team needs more, whether it be Crobat or Mew. So whichever one you want to use, that is your decision. Another Pokemon that I've been testing out and actually that is going to be used in the battle that's going to be shown after this is Flygon, Defog Flygon, which I know might seem a little bit odd because I do have 2 dragon types, but it's very nice because Defog Flygon is actually pretty bulky if you do tend to use it, and it's also a very good momentum gainer because it does have access to U-turn. But that's something I've been trying out. Mainly I like to go with Crobat or Mew though. Flygon is just something I was kind of experimenting with. So that helps your stealth rocking problem right there, as well as spiking or toxic spikes problem. Okay, so sorry about that. I know this is unprofessional, but I tend to get interrupted from time to time when I record. So if I kind of pause and just say sorry, then just know that I got interrupted. Anyways, moving on. As I was saying, the defogger of your choice just really comes down to your team. Now looking at another damage calc, we have Weavile. Weavile is one of those Pokemon in UU that is just so threatening. It honestly barely has any counters outside of like maybe Mega Aggron, which you could pair up with Kyurem to deal with Weavile, but as of recently I've honestly not been seeing too many Weaviles, which is really interesting just because, as I said, it is a really big threat. But the only move that can even remotely have a chance to knock out Kyurem is Low Kick, which only does 87 to 102% of damage to Kyurem, which means unless your opponent gets a high damage roll, they will not be able to knock out your Kyurem, allowing you to get off a solid 40 to almost 50% amount of damage. And at that point, if you're able to get up Stealth Rocks and get off at least 2 Life Orb hits on your opponent, you'll bring it down to a point where you should be able to knock it out. If not, then bring it down to a point where another Life Orb hit will be able to knock it out. strat, which means you are going to be able to get rid of one of the biggest threats in the U tier with just Kyurem. So that's very good. The other very common move on Weavile is knockoff, which knockoff only does 52 to 62% amount of damage, which is significantly less, obviously. So if you really wanted to, if you know that your opponent's Weavile does not carry the locate, you can easily stay in and try to roost off the damage just to be able to have them knock off your leftovers. Then that way it'll weaken the knockoff, and then you can just kind of start taking them down with the earth power. So it'd be very nice to be able to get rid of a big threat and just Kyurem. Again, Kyurem being able to take down a giant threat, which is really great. Although you do have teammates, so if you really wanted to, as I said, you could easily pair up Kyurem White with Mega Aggron. Personally, I don't like to run Mega Aggron without running a Florges, and I didn't want to make too much of a defensive team. Although Kyurem can actually be really helpful on a very defensive team, especially if the defensive team is running Toxic Spikes. Although right now in this current metagame, I feel Toxic Spikes really are not that common just because of the amount of usage of Nidoking and Roserade, which I do actually have damage calcs for both of them, and I'll get to those when I get to those. But later in the metagame, as it unfolds and we get to know what is really common and what is really not, if you really wanted to, you could easily make a team with Kyurem, Toxic Spike support, Mega Aggron, and Florges. Yes, it'll be a stall, semi-stall team, so if you're into that, you could easily do that, which I myself like stall, so I might actually be trying that out. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. But Kyurem, as I said, not only does it take hits, it can stall and it can still dish out damage, which is just makes it even all the better. So let's go look at another noteworthy damage calc. This is one that I was actually kind of impressed about, and it's evolving Darmanitan. Now, if you played UUSF recently, you will know that Darmanitan has actually been very, very common, and I faced it at least like maybe 7 out of 10 games. Personally, I like Victini more, but it's just down to personal preference. And actually, I have something to mention about Victini probably after this when I talk more about teammates. But Darmanitan's Scarfed Flare Blitz only does 72 to 85% amount of damage, which, as I said, in my opinion, is just really, really impressive. Obviously, you could pair up Kyurem with a Slowbro, which means you don't have to worry about Darmanitan, but if you do lose your water type and you have your Kyurem at full HP, just note that if your opponent's Darmanitan is Scarfed, you can easily live one Flare Blitz and in return annihilate them with a Earth Power, which does 88 to 104%. So after the recoil damage, you'll definitely be able to get rid of Darmanitan. Although, as I said, it would be nice for you to pair it up with a water type, a dragon type, or a rock type to be able to take fire hits. But I just thought that damage calc was actually pretty impressive because, as I said, Darmanitan is very, very common. Another noteworthy calc, in my opinion, that I found to be pretty impressive was this Kyurem spread attacking max special defense, max HP, and Polion. And Earth Power does 37 to 44% amount of damage, which, as I said, I find to be very, very impressive just because Empoleon is very specially bulky, which means if it really came down to a one-on-one match, Kyurem would be able to beat Empoleon just because most Empoleons tend to carry Defog, Stealth Rock, Scald, and Roar, or Toxic. And actually, if they tend to carry Toxic over Roar, then you're able to just set up a substitute Earth Power until eventually they're gone, which makes Kyurem really a nice answer to Empoleon because Empoleon is extremely bulky, although you can always pair Kyurem up with something like Darmanitan or Victini or Machamp that can obviously deal with steel types to be able to allow Kyurem to put in some more work to your opponent's team. But that's just something I thought I would put out there. It's very impressive in my opinion. And as I mentioned, Roserade and Nidoking are very common in this tier. Well, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the EV spread, the speed EVs are tailor-made to outspeed max speed Roserade. And because Nidoking is slower than Roserade, This means Kyurem can easily outspeed both of them and OHKO them with Ice Beam. Ice Beam to Nidoking does 122 to 144%, and then to Roserade it does 107 to 126%. Now I did not include a damage calc of especially defensive Roserade just because 9 times out of 10 a Roserade will be offensively based, although if you guys would like me to, I can gladly put one in the paste bin that will be linked in the description below so you guys can go check it out. Moving on to more walls, Max Defense, Max HP Arcanine. That's a Pokemon that I've actually recently seen a lot, especially when my good friend Richard started using one. I think maybe he just saw other people using it and wanted to try it out. But I have been in situations where people bring in Arcanine thinking, oh, Kyurem can do nothing to Arcanine. Well, as you can see from the damage calc, Earth Power to Max Defense and Max HP Arcanine does 60 to 71%, which means it is an easy 2-hit KO, and in return, Flare Blitz will not be doing entirely too much damage to Kyurem, which means you can easily beat defensive Arcanine, which physical Arcanine can check physical threats such as Manchow, Heracross, Medicham, if people still run Medicham, although I haven't seen it. It checks Weavile, Darmanitan, Victini, Machamp, Curslax, Cinccino on occasion, I've seen that recently, Ambipom, which has grown in usage as well, Drapion, I'm just trying to go down the list here, Scrafty, and I think that's really all like the common physical attackers in my opinion. Machamp, I don't think I said that, but yeah, Kyurem can be paired up with either one of those Pokemon I just mentioned to be able to take down defensive Arcanine and just allow them to put in some work. Obviously, because defensive Arcanine tend to carry Intimidate, it really does make a good physical wall to check those Pokemon as well as some other physical attackers. Now, moving on down, we have Kingdra. Kingdra is something that I've actually not really seen as of recently, but I still phase it on occasion, and I have people thinking that they can come in, take an Ice Beam, set up a Focus Energy, and then eventually just sweep with Kingdra. But no, little do they know that Ice Beam is actually just barely a 2-hit KO. If you get up your Stealth Rocks though, it is still a 2-hit KO, but you get what I'm trying to say. Kyurem can 2-hit KO Kingdra without any worries about it, which means the Focus Energy set will no longer be a problem. So moving on down, we have Quagsire, which as of recently as well I've seen a lot more people use, and I've been in certain situations where people think, oh hey, I'm a Quagsire, I can take a hit from Kyurem. No, little did they know that it is an easy 2-hit KO as well, depending on min-max obviously, and if you do have Stealth Rocks up, you should be able to 2-hit KO it with relative ease. If not, then you can easily outstall it of Earthquakes and just substitute on its Toxics and eventually be able to beat it one-on-one. But yeah guys, I think I've rambled on enough. I don't know how long this is. I apologize if this is like 15 minutes plus, but basically Kyurem is really just an impressive Pokemon that I guarantee you guys will love if you try out. But yeah, we're gonna get on into the battle that is gonna come along with this video. Alright, so we're like 20 minutes into this, and for those of you who are still here, then thank you. But here is the battle that is going to be coming along with this Kyurem set. Now, if you take a look at my team, I am right here, I am RVD. I am running a very offensively based team, and the original basis behind this team was obviously Subroost Kyurem combined with Choice Banded Victini, and honestly, these two Pokemon just complement each other so great. You should definitely try out this combination of Victini and Kyurem. Two other Pokemon that I really wanted on the team were Manchow and Raikou. Raikou just because Scarf Raikou is honestly one of the best Scarfers in my opinion right now in UU, and then Life Orb Manchow just hits extremely hard and is able to break down walls that otherwise my Victini and Kyurem would have troubles with. And as I mentioned, I was trying out Physical Defensive Flygon with Defog because I don't have a water type and I couldn't fit a water type on the team, and I really wanted a Pokemon with Defog, so I decided why not try Flygon. So I tried Defensive Flygon, and then finally off I have Specially Defensive Celebi to be able to deal with things like Crocoon, which otherwise would be able to sweep through my team because I do carry the Perish Song, and to be able to put more offensive pressure on water types that would be able to stop my Victini or my Kyurem. So looking at my opponent's team, he has a very very physically, not physically, sorry, but a very offensively based team. Now, going into the battle, the biggest threat I saw was honestly going to be that Weavile, just because, as you can see from my team, unless my Kyurem is at full HP, it is not going to appreciate taking a hit from that Weavile. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get the battle started. So I'm going to be leading off with my Manchow, as he's going to be leading off with the Blastoise. So expecting him to just want to stay in a Mega Evolve, I decided to go for the Fake Out. The reason why I didn't go for the high jump kick this turn is because I knew that it would not be able to knock him out, so I decided just to go for the safe U-turn to be able to bring in my Celebi to be able to take on this Blastoise, as he ends up going for the Scald. Luckily for me, he does not end up getting the burn, which means I'm in a position where I can honestly go for the Giga Drain or just go for the Stealth Rocks. And predicting him to want to switch out, I go ahead and go for the Stealth Rocks, but he stays in, shows me that he has the Dark Pulse, as my Giga Drain then just barely fails to knock out the Blastoise, as he follows up by going for a Rapid Spin. I'm going to pause this right here because this is one of the most important turns in this battle. This turn right here dictates if I'm going to be able to have an advantage throughout the remainder of this battle. So as you can see, Blastoise is at 12% HP, which means if I'm able to get up my Stealth Rocks this turn and he goes for the Dark Pulse, if he switches out and switches back in, he will get knocked out by the Stealth Rocks, allow me to keep up my rocks for the remainder of the battle to be able to get off damage on the remainder of his team every time something wants to switch in. But if I go for the Giga Drain and I knock out Blastoise, that invites him to freely bring in the Weavile or the Nidoking and easily be able to knock out something on my team, and then from there he could possibly keep up offensive pressure, preventing me from allowing me to get up my Stealth Rocks. And I could also stay in, get up my rocks, hope that he goes for the Dark Pulse, and then that way I'll be able to knock him out the following turn. Or if he does want to stay in and go for the Rapid Spin, predicting me to go for the Stealth Rocks, it'll be the same thing that it is on turn 4 now, but it'll just be on turn 5, and then it'll be back to the mind games. So ultimately, I decide to go for the Stealth Rocks, as he actually ends up going for the Dark Pulse, which means I'm going to be able to keep this momentum that I have right now for this battle, because I have a distinct advantage of me having up my Stealth Rocks, and because my team is so offensively based, I should be able to keep up offensive pressure on his team to prevent that Nidoking or this Metagross from possibly getting up his own Stealth Rock. So I decided to leave in my Celebi for Death Fodder, as he actually ends up going for the Meteor Mash. I was a little bit surprised that he didn't go for the rocks. I'm guessing that he doesn't carry it on this Metagross, because I have seen a lot of Metagross that don't tend to carry rocks, but this has me thinking that he probably has rocks on the Nidoking, so I really have to watch out for that. As I'm able to V-create to knock out the Metagross, he's going to end up bringing in the Nidoking. Now I could have stayed in, possibly risking him going for the Stealth Rocks, but he actually goes for the aggressive play, which is the Earth Power, knocking out my Flygon with the Ice Beam the following turn, allowing me to now get a free switch back into my Victini. And I'm in a position where I can honestly just go for the V-Crate. Even if he brings in the Rotom after Stealth Rocks, I will be able to 2 KO, but he ultimately decides to fodder off his Chestnut. So I managed to get rid of half of his team already. As he brings back in the Nidoking, I decided just to fodder off my my Manchow, sorry, because Manchow honestly has done its job. I managed to get rid of the Blastoise, and then this way I can get a free switch into my Kyurem, which is going to allow me to get up Substitute, as he actually stays in thinking that he would be faster than me, just because the old 5th gen set used to run enough speed to outspeed base 80s, as where this one runs enough speed to outspeed base 90s. So knowing that he is going to be fearing me knocking him out with an Ice Beam, I'm actually going to go for the Substitute, predicting him to want to switch out. As he brings in the Rotom, I'm just going to stay in, and I want to see what he wants to go for, as it turns out that he is Choice Scarfed. I decided to go for the Roost on the off chance that he did want to go for the Overheat, but because I am behind a Substitute, I am in a perfect position where I can just go safely for the Ice Beam, allowing me to knock out the Nidoking and knocking out one giant threat to my team. As he brings in the Rotom, I predicted him to want to go for the Volt Switch again, so I decided to go for the Substitute. But either way, because he is a -2, I am still going to be able to just safely go for the offensive move, which is going to be the Ice Beam, just because the following turn, because he is a -4, he is not going to be able to break my Substitute, allowing me to get behind a sub. Unfortunately though, I get a freeze, which, as I said, at -4 he could not break my Substitute. So either way, this turn I would have been able to get up a Substitute, and then I could have knocked out the Rotom. the following turn. As he brings in the Weavile, he is going to be able to easily break my substitute. Unfortunately, my Earth Power does not quite knock it out, but I am going to be able to get off a solid 44% amount of damage, as he then turns out to have the knockoff. And this is what I mentioned earlier, not many Weaviles that I've seen tend to carry low kick, which means I'm going to be able to knock out the Weavile and the Rotom will get knocked out by the Stealth Rocks, and that is going to be the victory in my favor. So as you can see, Kyurem can definitely put in work, especially when paired up with Victini. Now, I'm not saying that this combination is great or it's something new. There are certain situations where this combination will fail, but every Pokemon is not perfect. All I wanted to make this video for was because I wanted you guys to know that Kyurem is a really good Pokemon in UU and should definitely be used more. So if you guys did enjoy this 6ftStrats with 6fthax, by all means feel free to leave a like, leave a comment down below, make sure to subscribe to Lumio Station, and feel free to come check me out. And with that, guys, I will see you all next Sunday. So later, everybody.